tell us about your journey in fitness.
Where do you want me to start? How I started?
How did you start in fitness?
What am I affiliated with now?
Yeah, exactly.
Very first weight you ever picked up.
All right. So there's actually
When
really
did you know?
2 points of this story.
Yeah.
So we can talk. If you don't like the first story, I'll tell you the second one.
I like that.
But the first part of the story, I come from a really small hometown. It's called Grass Valley, California. I think when I left, it was like population 3,200 people.
Oh, wow.
Small hometown. Basically, during the gold rush time, if families were looking for gold, they moved out to this little country bumpkin town. So it's a super small hometown, and it's that type of thing where you kind of marry your high school sweetheart. And so I had just got out of like my first relationship, and I was a little bummed. I didn't do anything with my sports. I made some poor decisions in high school, and I was kind of stuck in my hometown figuring it out after I graduated. And first real big heartbreak that I got. I think a lot of guys start off in the fitness. I don't know what it is, but you get your first heartbreak, and you're like, I'm getting jacked. Yeah. And I'm never letting a girl do this to me again. And I was training at one of the local gyms. I think it was a South Yuba club, and I was working out with a couple guys that were a couple years older than me. And, they were big, strong, big football players, and I just kind of did what they were doing. And it was traditionally now a split. I never thought like rest and rep count and things like that. I just went and moved weights around because I thought that's what we did. And I remember the superset like it was yesterday. It was like the Smith machine tricep dip unders with tricep extensions on the rope. And like we were doing 4 sets of 10 to 12, and it was a superset. Like I'm learning supersets back then. And I remember finished the workout, and I went home, and I was talking to my mom, and I was trying to hang my laundry. And I was like putting on the clothes hook, and I was hanging it up, and I physically couldn't like get my arm up. And it was like the first time that I got that swole pump breakdown. And for whatever reason, like I was hooked on it. I just, from that day on, I wanted to know more. And that was kind of the first initial, like, I want more of this.
For me, it was like putting shampoo or conditioner in the shower. You're like, oh, I can't raise my arms. I love it.
How old were you then?
I was probably 17, 18.
Oh.
17, 18 years
Nice.
old. I mean, I knew about fitness prior to that, but that was like the first initial. I was like, I love that feeling. I want more of it. That's story one.
That's a
we
great
like story one.
Story one's great.
Story two?
Dive into story two.
So I think there was a lot of like build up to that moment of understanding like this is something that I want to dive into. But my grandpa was a savage. I'll try to send you a photo of him. He's passed away now, rest in peace. But very simple guy, but someone that you just didn't mess with. It was just a large, like you're a large human, Brock. He was a large human.
Yeah.
He was
probably different kinds of large humans.
Different kinds of large humans.
Yeah.
6'4", I think when he was 80 years old, he was 6'4", about 270.
Damn.
And like his knuckles were just, I remember every time like shaking his hand, I'm like, oh, what are you? Like, who built you? But he had in his ranch, he had this like quarter-mile loop. And now that I think back, I was like, he was so ahead of the times of like innovation of how he trained. But he had this like quarter-mile loop, and it was all mud, and it went throughout the woods. And he had built like a squat rack in a tree, and he had built like a pull-up bar in a tree. Like he did all this crazy stuff, and there was like stations all throughout this quarter-mile loop. And he'd wake up every morning, he'd skull his, he'd crack his egg yolks raw. Like he was very traditional, old school, and he would do this loop. And he would do like 4 runs around the quarter-mile loop, and he would hit the stations, and he would do 10 sets of this, 10 sets of this.
Dude.
And every time. And that's what he did every single day. But he was a professional boxer and a bodybuilder back in his day. I'll send you photos.
Wow.
It's
Dude,
insane.
please, dude. That sounds
Literally like Rocky and Rocky IV.
That is one of the coolest, like, when I turn like 50 or 60 max, I want to have a quarter-mile loop and do that, because 100%. That's how much better in shape can you possibly be than that?
Yeah, and it just doesn't. I mean, think about it. No internet. I mean, he didn't have a cell phone. Like he was old school. Like he just knew he needed to move this muscle group, this body part, and he just needed to do it every day and well-rounded.
Yeah.
But he did it every day, and I remember going up to him like, as a kid, like I'm not registering a workout. Like I still hadn't pictured that. I just saw this thing that he did, and he looked that big, and I was like, this is fucking cool.
Yeah.
So that's story 2 where it was. And I actually with my current job now, I actually talk a lot about this story because I always ask, how did you get into fitness? And I was like, I think a big part of it was my grandpa.
That's awesome.
That's cool.
Those inspirations are important, right? Like anything that can like get you that feeling and like, inspire you.
Yeah, and it's at the time I didn't know it was. Now that I look back, I'm like, damn, like maybe he played a much larger a part of my life than I realized.
Imprinted in your subconscious.
Yeah.
Yeah. I definitely have stuff like that as well. And, I still remember there's this moment where this dude, and a horrible relationship with my dad. Actually, none now. But when I was a kid, there was a moment when he wasn't around much, but there was one moment where this guy got out of this lifted Silverado, right? And he had long hair and he's tan and he was just like super fit. And my dad like looked at him and idolized him basically, you know, and he's like, that guy's got to have it all, you know, like type thing. And I remember when I was like 5 years old, that was my idea of somebody who had it all, right? But same thing, like my grandpa, also rest in peace, he was 5'9", tiny little dude, but was obsessed with working out, dude. And there was just all these different influences throughout my life. And then I got to a point where I was like, I just, you know, started working out when I was 15. I was super skinny. I was bullied, made fun of, like just crazy, and was really uncomfortable in my own skin. And then I found working out through school. They had a weight training class at one of the 9 different schools I transferred to or whatever. And they were doing bench press the first day. I'd never benched. I don't even know if I'd done push-ups yet, you know. I'm 15 and a half. And they put 95 pounds on the bar, not even 100 pounds. And it falls on my chest in front of everyone, dude. And everyone makes fun of me, bro. And I was just like, okay. With that first month, I got a bench set at my house and I was just working out nonstop. The first month, because I was so skinny and tall, I was 6'3", 135 pounds. When my metabolism started going even faster, I couldn't sleep because I was so hungry. I'd wake up at 2 a.m. every night. I'd make 2 turkey sandwiches and 2 bowls of Fruity Pebbles, and then I could go back to sleep. That first month, I put on 35 pounds. And so I was only like 170, 165 at that point. But it, like, my shirts filled out different. I was like walking around flexing. I still had a twig arm, right? But I'm like, changed everything for me. I became obsessed, dude. And it was like I wanted to become, when I was a kid, what everyone else I thought looked up to, you know?
Yeah. Dude, and think of like, that really speaks to like the power of fitness, man. And like, I'm not trying to like get all super deep and sidebar, but like, you know, my main inspiration for fitness was definitely my father, my older brother, playing sports, right? My teammates, stuff like that. And like, for you to not have a strong relationship with your father, and like to think how weak of a person I would feel like without being lucky to have that relationship with my father and that inspiration, right? It's a testament to like your iron will and like how impressive it is, right? But like, sorry, it's total deep sidetrack. I'm just like, it's a crazy powerful thing we don't really talk about a lot, but
yeah,
I think it's shaped a lot of people who they are today. And I would say without that, like I wouldn't know what I'd be doing. I'd probably be doing something that I wouldn't like. And I made a career out of something I love.
Yeah,
because I one day decided to pick up weights.
Thank you for watching. Don't forget to drop a like if you enjoyed the video.
And subscribe and hit the bell for a whole lot more to come.